we just sit anywhere you like. Okay, where you stand for two and. Did you have very far to drive?
No, I live just off Sandpoint Way near the City Peoples. So, yeah, there was some medical issues
Oh, right. So traffic got caught up.
traffic was kind of
Well, it's nice to meet you, Kit. Hi. This is Brian and Bruce.
I would like to do PCC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So there's some thing with fire,
Yeah.
and something hidden in
I,
that.
it looked like maybe a gentleman was, just, event. Anyway, the 8 cars.
Yeah.
So, they're only you and Michael are guests. I mean, we're guests too, but we're members, so we're here. So,
This is my first time attending the meeting at all. I don't know
you're in there?
I've done this with meeting. I've like.
It was, I think,
I love it. We're here. Proud of you. So,
We're passing on.
this is gonna be standard.
actually farther down, so.
And maybe you'll get comfortable with the Zoom too, so you feel easier around.
Yeah.
Car or something.
Yeah.
It's too late. You just come in an hour in.
In that area.
There's always something still going on. So 6:30 till 7, we have the intro. Tracy takes on some kind of beekeeping first class lesson. When we do kind of meeting notes that Dawn is our president. She'll do that, and then she'll pass it over to the speaker class night.
Zoom or
Nobody comes anywhere anymore. I mean, I really don't even think that's an idea, but talk about.
I hope that's hot enough. Michael, I hope that's
Steaming, but,
okay.
yeah.
Still getting hot.
Yeah, it's not quite done.
Will it tell us when it's done, or?
It stops.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Bill, can you hear us?
Yes, very loud, actually.
Then I didn't need to talk that loud.
Yeah.
That's cold water.
Okay.
Just bring it on.
Well, 20 people
Cold hot,
signed
not
in so
hot.
far.
Wait, what? Is it heating? Yeah. Okay. Oh, I bet it turned green. We can figure it out.
On the first night, oh.
Good, yeah.
I appreciate it. I can use this, back me up. Bill?
Well, we used to be at the Center for Urban Rental, you know what that is? It's kind of like, instead of coming this way, you turn and go around the big university parking lot, kind of by QFC, and then you turn. Right, Sonia?
I'm Sophia.
Oh, Sophia,
Proceeds, yes.
Yeah. Hi.
It's working.
She's having trouble with something.
Fabulous. I'm so excited for this. I cannot tell you. When I'm on phone, I lost my mind. So. Because I'm literally like, oh, that's exactly.
Well, it is 6:30, does someone want to?
Well,
anyways,
so
I'm
so pleased.
It's charged.
Tracy Klein, I really appreciate it.
Okay.
She love it.
What's the same?
Yeah, Tracy's here
I was giving another minute. Magali is trying to sign in, so I'm giving it one more minute for Magali. I think it's okay.
Great. So everything's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Magali's here, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. And for the folks who are live in the room, when the meeting starts, I do need to ask that the discussion stops because it makes it really hard to speak. Thank you. It really creates a lot of feedback for the in the audio. So welcome to our first hybrid meeting in a very long time. We wanted to make sure that we had a really good piece of technology that we can help have meetings that help us all feel like we're kind of there in the room together. So this is an owl. We did some research and we went out and purchased an owl. And you can see the strip at the top. You can see the whole room. And whoever is speaking shows up in the main screen. So if you want to set your computer so you can see only the owl and not all of the tiles, if you want to see the owl tile really big, go up into the upper right-hand corner, view, and choose speaker view. And you'll have small tiles for everyone at home, and you'll have a large owl tile, which makes it a little easier to look at. So again, upper right corner, view and speaker view. And for the folks who are live, we can literally hear every word, and it makes it really hard to hear. There's a lot of audio noise, just like when we're on Zoom and people are speaking over each other, it kind of messes things up. So if I could just request that the live folks actually try and really keep the noise level down, it will make a better experience for everyone. I'm sorry, we're not used to having to be quiet when we're live. We're so happy to see each other. With that, let's go ahead and start with the beginner lesson. Tracy, are you here?
I am. Hello, everyone. So for those of you who can see me, I wore an appropriate shirt for today. It says caution, beekeeper. If you see me running, try to keep up. On that happy note, I'll tell you all later why it's important to keep up with me if I'm running. Hold on while I get this bad boy up here. All right. Don, raise your hand up that you can see my screen. Yay!
Good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We've got a two-parter for tonight. We've got a little bit for the folks that are just getting their new bees and have either installed them or are close to installing them. And for those of us that have bees that overwintered, talk a little bit about swarm prevention. So first up, I've installed my bees. We talked about that in last month's meeting. So if you want to recap on how to install your bees, I believe that's posted on PSBA's YouTube page now, and you can go back and watch the recording of how to install your bees from last month's meeting. So you've installed your bees, you're going to pick up from there. Now what do I do? All right. And so you want to remember to continuously feed pollen patties and 1-to-1 sugar syrup right now. We're going to have a fantastic, beautiful week of sunshine followed by more rain. So the bees are going to have time to go collect food and may or may not have enough stored up for the following week of rain. That's why you want to make sure that you supplement with pollen patties and 1-to-1 syrup. So if you installed a package, a week after you do that, you should go in and make sure that the queen has been released and that she's still, if she's not, that she's still alive in the cage. If she's still alive and still in the cage, then you want to go ahead and remove the rest of that candy plug after a week and go ahead and let her go. Save the queen cage. You never know when you might need one of those for later. It's a good thing to have around. So then after that, you want to plan on weekly inspections. And you don't need to look for the queen every time. Just look to see if there's larvae in there and continuous wax production. And the way you're going to get that continuous wax production is from feeding 1-to-1 syrup. And mangoes swaying in as well. Sorry about that. So Once the frames are 80% drawn out with wax, then you can add another brood box on top of that. A common beekeeping mistake the beginners make, I did the same thing, is you're anxious to add more space early. The bees like being crowded, but not too crowded, but they definitely don't like social distancing. So a smaller space is easier for them to keep warm. So you want to have about 80% of those frames drawn out and have bees on them before you add another box. And then keep feeding them. I notice I've mentioned that 3 times now. Keep feeding them, because another common mistake is people stop feeding them too soon and then they say, Tracy, my bees don't have enough wax, what do I do? And so when you get a new package of bees, it's kind of like a swarm. And so they're huge and prodigious wax builders until you stop feeding them. And then things slow down dramatically. So you want to keep feeding them at least until the blackberries are blooming. All right, and then on that inspection day, what do? You want to definitely have a plan. So you want to know, what's the purpose of me opening up this box and disturbing the bees? You want to make sure and light your smoker and suit up first. Notice I said light your smoker and suit up in that order. Don't put your suit on and then light your smoker, because you're liable to burn the veil on your suit. Don't want to do that, then it leaks bees. You want to bring your tools, your notebook, and anything that you're going to use for your to record your inspection. Have your extra woodenware ready. So even if you think that you need to maybe add an extra box, it's best to go ahead and have that out there and then take it back if you don't need it, as opposed to figuring out, oh no, I need another box, leaving the colony open, going to the garage or wherever and picking up the new one. So definitely want to have anything you anticipate needing out there. And then only remove the frames if it's over 55 outside. Work your hives from the back or the side so you don't block the entrance. And then if you can, make sure it's not windy or raining outside. Sometimes in the spring here, that's not possible. So you pick the best time in between the rain squalls coming through, run out there, inspect your bees. Hopefully get done before the next rain squall comes. So it's all about timing sometimes here in the spring. All right, and then one last mention about feeding. Here's a couple pictures that I took out in my apiary today of what the types of feeders that I use. The one on the bottom, ironically, is the top feeder, and the one on the top here is an in-frame feeder. It's important to continuously feed them 1-to-1 syrup right now. So that's 1 part sugar, 1 part water. And then if you want to add any commercial additives like Pro Health or something like that, that kind of helps prevent mold and fermentation happening in your syrup. And then I got asked this a couple of years ago, so I put this mention in that sucrose, which is sugar, bees do build more wax with that versus high fructose corn syrup. Some commercial beekeepers use it. And so I've been asked a couple times, that's why I put that in there. And then make sure and use summer pollen patties, not the winter ones, because the summer ones have a higher percentage of protein in them versus the winter ones. And then a word on when to stop feeding your bees. It's when you've got all the wax you need, the blackberries are blooming, and if you add supers and you plan to sell your honey, you should definitely not feed your bees then, because people want to purchase honey that's made from blackberry nectar, etc., instead of sugar syrup. And then just a quick reminder, don't feed your bees from honey from the store or any unknown sources. Also, don't feed them brown sugar or molasses. There's too much fiber in there. All right, and then officially on to swarm season. Yes, it is officially swarm season, and I promised that I would tell everyone why I'm wearing the caution. If you see me running, try to keep up shirt. I went over on Saturday to help a friend collect a swarm that came out of his colony, and they were on the ground. And usually swarms are super docile, and you could, like this swarm here, you could stick your hand literally right through there, and since they have nothing to protect, they're super docile. What I didn't realize was he'd been trying to get that swarm in a box for the last 4 hours, so they were pretty pissed. So I leaned over to scoop them into the box and they lit me up. So you want to make sure that you always wear your suit, even if you're going after a swarm. I picked 12 stingers out of my hand and my face. And I gave Dawn a really good lesson on what not to do. So that was fun. So it is officially swarm season. This was the first swarm I captured a few years ago. They're usually large primary swarms with lots of bees in them. And there's 3 main reasons why bees swarm. First and foremost is that reproductive urge. That's just what they do. That's how they go and they make new colonies. So it is definitely time, if you got bees that you overwintered, to start thinking about, are they getting ready to swarm? So if the brood box is crowded and there's no more places for the queen to lay eggs, is another good reason. And if they don't have enough room to store that nectar that's coming in right now from the maple bloom, then they'll also clog up the brood nest, not have room to lay more eggs, and swarm. So here's what that looks like. If you're looking for swarm cells, if you have 2 deeps, first thing you should do is tip the boxes up and look inside. And that's what I've done here for this picture. I've tipped the box up and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 swarm cells here, 7 swarm cells. This one's already capped. This one here got broken. The wax got broken. You can see the larva inside there. These bees are going to swarm. So it's important, if you see this, to do something, aka split. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here, but bigger class on splits is beyond the scope of this beginning class and would take way too much time, but I just want to give you guys a heads up on what it looks like, and then something that you can consider doing. So you want to also check for additional cells on the face of the comb. It's rare in a swarming situation, but it's not unusual. It's more prevalent on a supersedure, and those can be really hard to see. So I have a little fun exercise on the next slide. So if you are online and can open the chat box up, you just wiggle your cursor around and then click on chat. And if you're in the room, go ahead and hold up your hand and let me know, how many queen cells are there in this picture? Don't be shy. Okay, Bruce, unmute the room. What's the consensus in the room? How many queen cells are there?
I see 2. 1 in the middle top, and then to the left.
Okay, we'll give you guys the easy one. You can see that bee's butt sticking out of there. She's in there feeding the queen cell. So there's 1. Is there a guess in the room? How in the room in Seattle? How many do you guys think are on this page?
Talk louder, I think that would.
2, 3.
2?
3.
2 or 3? Okay. You guys are.
Yeah.
There's
thought
the
there was-
second one.
I thought there was
saw
2, but now
earlier.
you pointed another one out, so
I
3.
put it in the, oh, that, okay, where do you think the other one is?
We see.
There are 3.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Yeah,
You can't see it
okay.
at all. You can see the big pile of bees on top. That's why it's super hard to make sure that you've found all the queen cells, and you don't really want to shake those frames especially if you need those queen cells, because it might pop the larva out of the royal jelly that she's floating in. And those they're upside down. So the royal jelly's on the top and the little larva's attached to that and floating and being held there by friction. So there are 3 queen cells on this in this picture. And there aren't any more because I blew on the frame and moved the bees around. So I knew that there was only 3. All right, so here's a quick swarm prevention split. I'll just say that there are a bajillion different ways to do a split. You can let your imagination be your guide, but here's what a swarm prevention split would look like. You move the queen out of the box. So you're simulating a swarm. So you move the queen along with all the bees on that frame, and you need at least a minimum of 1 frame with eggs and mixed brood, 1 frame of cap brood, 1 frame with food, and then add a syrup feeder. And the reason why is that all of the bees, all the foragers will stay in the original location. All the foragers that accidentally go with her to the new location will fly back to the old location, unless you drive them more than 3 miles away. All right, and then what do you want to leave behind? You want to leave behind a minimum of the all-important 1 frame with eggs and mixed brood, 1 frame with cap brood, and 1 frame with pollen and honey. It's exactly the same thing, you guys. This is the minimum requirement for a colony of bees. And so that queenless half will make a queen, or you can buy a queen. If you want to buy a queen, you can do that. But if you want to try to raise a queen, this is the minimum requirement for a swarm prevention split. Uh-oh, what if my bees swarm away anyway? It happens to all of us. If you ask anybody that's kept bees for more than a year, well, for more than a week, and they tell you, oh, my bees have never swarmed. They're lying. So everybody's bees do swarm no matter what you do. This is actually a swarm that I captured one time at the Kent East Hill Nursery. It took 3 deeps to fit them all in. Yay for me. All right, so if your bees fly away off your property, they're no longer yours. And you need to gain the landowner's permission to capture them or collect them once they land and form a cluster like this. So if you're not comfortable doing that yourself, my humble recommendation is to call the person nearest you on the PSBA swarm list. The 2003 swarm list is up, and all you have to do is Google PSBA swarms or go to the website and click on the swarm link, and you'll find the person that lives nearest you and ask them to come pick them up. Now, that being said, once the people, who's ever on the swarm list comes to get the bees, they do expect to keep those bees as the compensation for coming to get them. So just know that once they leave your property, and if you cannot retrieve them, then please call someone on the PSBA swarm list so they can do that as a public service for the community. All right, and with that, I'd just like to close out with some resources that I put together for you guys for this month. If you have any questions, the PSBA apiary parties are starting up after tonight. Check the website to sign up for those apiary parties. There are some rules and regulations, obviously, to participate, and Maureen's posting those apiary parties. But the first one is May 6th from 11 to 1:30. Some other resources that are awesome. Randy Oliver has a fantastic website called Scientific Beekeeping, and he has a link. If you Google Scientific Beekeeping, first year beekeeping, he has that right on his homepage, and that's an excellent dissertation on what to look for and how to read the combs, and it's a really good resource for first year beekeepers. Also, if you wonder what a good inspection looks like, and you haven't been to the PSBA work party yet, and you've already got your bees installed, and you're thinking, what am I going to do in between now and then? Dave Burns is a certified master beekeeper in the Midwest, and he does a really good bee colony inspection. And it's pretty well done. He knows what he's doing, and he's got a lot of great stuff besides this on his webpage, but this is a great link. And then I want to just put a plug in. If you're stuck, email a PSBA neighborhood captain. And we get lots of questions and are happy to answer those emails as quickly as we can. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dawn. I don't know if we have time for questions.
Yes, we do. Is there any questions for Tracy?
There was one in the chat.
I missed that.
I always turn it off so I can see my slides. Sarah asks, is it usually very easy to find your swarm? What if they're nowhere to be found? Yeah, so it's funny, Sarah, in addition to what Kathy answers in the chat, which is when swarms issue, they usually don't go far. It happens usually between 10 and 2. If you can't find the swarm, it's a bummer. Kathy said, too bad. The scout bees will probably have a place that they went. So it's funny how bees will disappear into the wind. You'll see a swarm, you blink, and they're gone. So sometimes you find them, sometimes you don't. But if you can, if you see them leave and you follow them, you can sometimes follow them. Other times they go into parks and across ways that you can't follow them. So they do disappear. They usually do end up in somebody's tree somewhere in their backyard. And then someone on the swarm list usually gets a phone call.
I have a question from the room.
Yeah, great.
Okay. I've had a colony for one season. They didn't make it through the winter. They did swarm midsummer, and they were not able to be retrieved. And I was thinking, if I set up another hive and the swarm happened similarly, and if the hive was like close by, would they naturally go to a second hive, or would they typically skip that?
They usually skip the hive that's right next to it and fly at least 10 or 20 feet away. So if you want to put up a bait colony, then I would recommend putting that, 10 or 20 feet away. The best place for a swarm box is 10 feet up on a tree or a post. And the best sized swarm box is about the same size as a deep box. And so if you put up a nuke box, a lot of people make the mistake of putting up a nuke box and then they're like, I never catch any swarms, or I hardly ever get swarms. Why is that? It's because the size of the box is too small. And so scout bees come in and go, too small. There's free plans for a swarm box online. It's called a 6-frame swarm box. And it's really easy to carry around. It's easy to hang up in trees. And that's what I use with really good success. It holds 6 deeps across the top, and then it's too tall for the deep. So there's a big open space in the bottom. So you don't want to leave them in there very long. Otherwise they'll build lots of comb underneath those, but it's a fantastic design. If you're going to do that, I recommend that you make the lids a little bit longer than they say in the plans, because otherwise the lids are a really tight fit. So make them, and even an inch longer makes a way better lid.
Thank you.
Oh, and about swarm boxes too. If you buy a commercial swarm lure to put in there, that's great. Otherwise, if you have a little bottle of lemongrass oil, you can put a dab of lemongrass oil on top of one of the frames. Now, lemongrass oil is a lot like perfume. A little bit is good and a lot is awful. And if you put a lot in there, the bees go, ooh, too stinky, and no thanks. So really one little drop on your finger on top of one of the frames is good. And I always use one of my really old frames with old wax, 3 or 4-year-old wax on it. They like that really old wax smell. And so that's a really good attractant.
Tracy, I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Bruce.
And I know I've asked this one before. So when you do a alcohol mite wash, do you find the queen first? Because I'm not good at that. So I'm always afraid I'm dousing the queen in alcohol.
Yeah,
So,
so the queen is almost never on. The answer to your first question is yes, I do find the queen first. But if you have a hard time finding the queen is almost never on a frame of capped brood because there's nothing for her to do there. So you could take and shake, if there's a ton of bees on there, you could take and do a light shake off of there. And then the foragers fly off, and then there's less bees to look at to look for the queen. And there'll be plenty of bees left over on there to get us a 300 bee sample or half a cup. So I would use one of those frames, and that you're pretty well guaranteed that the queen's not going to be on there, and it's easier to see her on there if you give it a shake, you know, and then see if, you know, weird chance she is on there. Then she's going to be on the margins. She's not going to be, you know, on top of the capped brood unless she's just happens to be going through to get to a different frame. And Bill, it's not the end of the world if you kill the queen. It does set them back, but if you accidentally do kill the queen, there's eggs in there. Presumably there's eggs, and they can make a new queen. So it's not the end of the world. It's a bummer, obviously, but you'll be all right. Anybody else? Okay, may your bees not swarm. Over to you, Dawn.
And let me add one thing to the swarming is you go out and you think you're going to do a normal inspection, and you open up the hive and there's a lot of queen cells. You go, dang, this is going to take a lot longer than I thought. And when you're new, there's so many decision points about what am I going to do with these queen cells. So the first thing you want to do is take a picture of the frames and the cells, and then go ahead and close it back up and call your mentor, or send one of us, your neighborhood captain, a text. And if you have pictures of what's on the frames, then they're going to be able to help you a lot more easily.
That's a great point.
Okay, so let's jump into the regular meeting here. Again, for those who weren't here before, I want to thank you to our first hybrid meeting in quite a while. We invested in an owl, and so you can probably see on one of your tiles the entire room in the top, and then the speaker view is in the middle. If you go up to the upper right hand corner of your screen and choose speaker, then that owl picture will come out much bigger, and you'll be able to see both the speaker and the room a little bit more easily. I'm not going to be able to come into the meetings because I live just south of Bellingham, so I will always be remote, which is a shame, because I really do want to come in and meet you guys. Where I'll meet you is in the apiary. So I'm going to be there a couple times a month helping out with apiary lessons. Bruce, could I talk you into muting the, I know Magali would know how to do this, how to mute the room. Let's see.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Magali. For those of you who are there in person, I hope you're getting a chance to mingle and meet and talk to other beekeepers. Please, before you go tonight, introduce yourself to at least a couple of people. Let them know if you're new or if you're experienced, because part of what we really try and do is hook up experienced people and new people. And there is no question that's too silly to ask. Feel free to ask any question. Don't be shy. And just share what's in your apiary. We're beekeepers. We love to talk about bees. So I'm going to talk about some upcoming events that are coming up and some volunteer opportunities that we have. There's a number of really fun things coming up this spring. So even if you can't make it to these events, feel free to come by the event and just say hi, because we do really fun events. And if you volunteer, then you are eligible to rent one of the club's extractors, which is really a deal. Everyone could probably buy their own extractor, but the challenge is storing the darn thing. They take up a lot of room. And it's so much easier if someone else is storing it for you, and you can just go pick it up once a year when you need it. So make sure to get some volunteer hours in, and you'll be able to rent those for a really reasonable price. I think it might still be $15 a day, something in there. It's really reasonable. So the first thing coming up is the Seattle Tilth. Kit, do you want to talk about these or you want me to present them? Oh, you're on mute, so sorry.
Sorry, we're mute.
Mute, unmute, and they're both important. So yeah, we were talking pretty quick. Brian is sitting right next to the button. So I am working on pulling the events together for the season, and it's really fun to see events come back together. The first event is Sunday, May 7th, and it is in Wallingford with Seattle Tilth. It's the edible plant sale. It's a really fun event to participate in because, to support PSBA app, because they do a really good job of welcoming vendors and volunteers. There's a food tent and you can kind of leave, given that there's enough of us volunteering, you can kind of be at the booth and then leave to see the fair and come back and enjoy being at Seattle Tilth at the same time as you're helping PSBA. So that's just coming up a week from Sunday, and we'd love to see volunteers sign up. I am Kay Hyatt at PugetSoundBees.org. If anybody has questions or wants to let me know that they can be there. We need the event goes for 3 days, Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. And we have just selected one day so that we're comfortable manning that. And we've done this traditionally over the years. There's a setup group of people we need that help get it, get the booth ready. And then there's a breakdown at the end. So the event goes from 11 to 3, 10 to 3. So the first set goes from 9 to noon and the next one goes from noon to 4. So you'll be, spread the load and everybody kind of has fun. We'll have an observation hive. We'll have honey to sell, and there'll be lots of families and kids with curiosity. And you don't really need to know a lot about bees to help. You'll have fun talking bees no matter what level beekeeper you are. So please consider joining us for that. The next event we have is also in May on the 20th. I'm just going to go into detail on the May events. The 20th of May is the Bee Festival, which is we did last year, even though COVID was still among us, or kind of getting in the way of events. I guess COVID's still among us. So May 20th, the event is from noon until 3. And so we just need a couple people to come early to help set up, and then we'll close up at 3. So it's one set of volunteers. And it's a terrific community event set up in Highland Park. High Point Park. I get this backwards. Nancy's my event queen. Nancy always comes to the events and helps set up everything. So really we're backing up Nancy when we break up afterwards and set up before. So she doesn't have to do that by herself. She needs support for that, loading everything out of her car. So anyway, that is a great, very family-oriented, really well-organized, and it's at the Bee Garden, which one of the PSBA board members of years ago past actually got a grant and had an incredible octagonal building built, which has a concrete floor and a back door with a code. You can get in and it's all screened in so people can just get right up and watch. So there's windows, you're not like exposed to wire, it's building and bees are flying up over the building. So it's very safe, and there's benches out front for participation in kind of a classroom situation. And there's also a pollinator garden right there. So that makes a bee festival natural, and it's really well done. So please consider that one too. So again, it's KHIATT at PugetSoundBees.org.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kit. And there's also a volunteer sign up on the website at PugetSoundBees.org. There's a sign up there on the calendar. And it's also, that's a good spot to remember what the events are and what the times are. And if you sign up, then you'll also be looped in for information on other events that might be available. And this is a volunteer-run organization. We deeply appreciate having you show up and do these events. Plus, they're a lot of fun. Once you do them, you just really, really enjoy it. And then we have another volunteer opportunity. Is Gerardo here?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you want to talk about the event, or do you want me to present it? Which do you prefer?
Which event are you talking about?
It's the preschool teacher. I'm sorry, it's a volunteer opportunity for the preschool teacher looking for someone to come in and speak on bees to the
Yeah, I
classroom.
got a volunteer. Thank you.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
good. Wow.
We are okay.
All right, you guys.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I was gonna put a plug in for you. So what Gerardo got was an email from a preschool teacher who was looking for someone to come in and talk about bees because the kids are doing a study on insects. And so just someone to come in and talk for 15 minutes to the kids and to the teacher. And we get these requests periodically, and they're a lot of fun. If your kids are grown and you miss them, or if you just like going into schools and talking, Gerardo's your guy. He gets a lot of these opportunities, and we have equipment to support you. So we have it's basically a 10-frame box with frames in it, and when you pull the frame out, there's pictures of bees and brood and all of the different things that kids would find if they were actually there opening a hive. So we have some really fun equipment that we can loan you to take out and go help kids learn about bees. So as these events come up, feel free to contact Gerardo. He's really good at contacting the teachers and finding these great events. Or I think we also have an observation hive that will take a little bit more planning because we actually have to get some bees into it. And you'd want to confirm with the teacher that it's okay to bring real bees into the classroom, but we do have an observation hive available. Wonderful. Thank you, Gerardo. Maureen and Kathleen, do you want to talk about the events that are coming up in the apiary, the package installation and maybe the apiary days? And if you'd rather have me talk about it, then let me know. Let's see. Well, I guess that's me then. Okay.
Hey, Dawn.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi. I don't see Maureen on the call.
I don't either. I just looked. Yeah.
So I can say we did the bee installation on Sunday. We had a nice group of people turn out. We have now three hives going in the apiary, and lots and lots of foot traffic as we were doing it. People were really excited to find out what it is we were doing. So it was a really fun event.
Yeah, and I want to introduce you folks to Kathleen. If you haven't met her, Kathleen is on our board, and she is taking over, helping to manage the apiary with Maureen. And we're kind of transitioning, so Maureen has a fewer things on her plate. So we're just so excited, Kathleen, to have you there helping out in the apiary. It's going to be a really good summer, and there might be times when all three of us actually get to be in the apiary also, because there's a lot of fun synergy that goes on when you've got multiple teachers. We kind of bounce off of each other, and it's a lot of fun. So I will be there approximately twice a month, giving lessons as we go through the hives. I think Maureen is probably going to be there a couple times a month also. And Kathleen, what's your plan?
I will be there as often as I can. So frankly, if I could do every time you guys are there, I will happily be there to help out and to soak in all your knowledge.
Good, good. Well, it's going to be a fun year with the bees, so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm really looking forward to having all the membership, as many people as possible coming into the apiary. It really is the best way to learn. We can read books and we can watch YouTube videos, but until you've actually stood by somebody's side and watched them pull a frame out of the box and kind of turn it side to side and talk about what they see on the frame and what it means to the whole colony, there's so much value in that. It's really, really hard to learn remotely. This is one of those things that it's more than a science, it's a craft. And a craft is a hands-on skill where you go and you learn at someone's side. So I really encourage you to come out to the apiary this year. And we're not going to call them work parties, because that kind of sounds like we show up and scrape hives or something, and scrape boxes. And that's not the case. It's a time when we stand around and talk about bees, which beekeepers love to do, and learn about bees and learn different techniques, because remember, for every 10 beekeepers, there's 25 opinions. So part of it is science and part of it is art. And those are the things that we learn from each other when we come together around the hive boxes. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And Kathleen, I'm really looking forward to working with you this summer. Thank
Same.
you. Yeah. And how did the package installation go? Do you want to give us a little apiary update?
No, it went well. So we've got three, two in the Langstroth and one in the top bar. And I'm going to go back tomorrow to see if the queen has been released yet. So it was a really fun experience. I've not seen how a package is installed before, so it was great to get my hands in the bees again.
Yeah, packages are magical. They're just, I love handling packages. The bees are so calm. And so for those of you who don't know, we do have a top bar. I'm going to call Jeff a top bar expert. He's got a lot of top bars. He's been keeping them for a lot of years, and he teaches our top bar class. And so a top bar is a really fun and different way to keep bees. And it's really hard to find hands-on people that can help you learn how to keep bees. So if in a top bar hive. So if you're interested in learning about top bars, send Jeff a note and find out when he's going to be out there. And you can make sure to show up on those days and learn how to keep bees in top bars, because that's how they're kept in large parts of the world. Primarily, there's Langstroths, top bars, and AZ hives, I think, are the main kinds of hives across the world. So it's always fun to learn something new with the bees. So we will be posting the Apiary Day schedule to the calendar pretty soon. It's not up there yet. I think it's going to be up by tomorrow. So you'll be able to see when the Apiary Days will be held. You can sign up for them. We kind of need to know who's coming. And there's also a waiver there that you'll sign to make sure that our liability is covered, and it's just right there on the website. It's really easy to do. And we're going to do things like make sure that everything is done in the healthiest way possible for the bees. So we will have bleach wipes for you. So if you're bringing your own hive tool and your own gloves, everybody washes hands, so we're not spreading viruses between the apiaries. So we're gonna have a lot of good best practices going on. Let's see. And so moving on to the club's community outreach, I want to talk a little bit about some of the fun things that we're doing as a club, so that you guys are kind of aware of how active this club is. We are one of the largest clubs in the state. So we do a lot of fun things, and we have a lot of active members. One of the things that we're continuing to do this year that we've done in past years is we have seeds for bees, and Bruce has those. And they're probably in the room right now. So if you show up live, then you'll be able to pick up some seeds. And it's a really nice way to help people support pollinators and bring awareness to pollinators, not just honeybees, but all pollinators. And we distribute those seeds when we go to events, or if you're going out to speak at a classroom and you want to bring a handful of the seeds with you for the kids, that is a great way to get people excited about pollinators and help them out at the same time. We're going to have probably a few more street fairs and events like that, so we'll make sure to keep you posted. And we have as we said earlier, we've got the educational materials for schools. Now that we're back live, if you show up to the live meeting, you can actually buy honey. Nancy helps take care of our honey sales, and she gets 5-gallon buckets of honey. And then she puts a heated blanket around them to warm them up so they can be decanted out into jars. And it's a variety of flavors of honey. So I don't know what we have this year. Last year we had, a couple of years ago, we had some crystallized creamed honey, which is delicious, wildflower honey. So it's fun to buy a couple of different types and taste them and see how they taste different. And then you can also compare the flavor of that to what's coming out of your hives. And it's every honey has such a different flavor and such a different color that it's really fun to try different ones. Let's see, so we have some resources that I'm going to put into the chat box here. Let's see here. If you're in the room and not on the Zoom, you can always go in and enter the Zoom from your phone and pick up these links. Is a pretty easy way to grab these links. So if you do open the Zoom meeting on your phone, make sure to turn it on mute so we don't get that echo chamber going. But I like to provide these links for everybody of things that we're doing. So the PSB membership page is there, signing up for membership. Here's a link to the items that Kit was talking about, the edible plant sale. And we have neighborhood captains list. So when you go on our website, there's a link here to neighborhood captains, and that is the person in your neighborhood who can help you out. They are your neighborhood mentor, and feel free to call them and ask them any questions at all. That's why they're on the list, to be available to you and to help you make sure that your bees do well. There is actually a petition here for license plates. So I think it was Oregon just got their honeybee affinity license plate. And Washington State is trying to petition to get a vanity plate for beekeepers and people who just want to support pollinators. And so they would design a really fun pollinator oriented plate, and then you pay a few extra dollars for it. And then the extra money, part of it goes to support the Washington State Beekeepers Association, which is our state level entity. We're regional local clubs. There's a state club. And it asks you if you would commit to buying a plate, but they're not going to hold that to you. They're not going to hold you to it. Go ahead and sign up saying, yeah, I'm going to sign it and I want a plate. And you don't actually have to if you decide when it gets here that for some reason you don't want it or it's too expensive, but it would be really fun to have those plates in Washington State. What else have we got? We do still have our honeybee vendors. We've talked about those a little bit at the past meetings. If you're still looking for bees, then some of the vendors are still available. Usually through the end of May, you can still find bees, and then it starts getting a little bit late into the season. So if you need a queen, a replacement queen, or some additional bees, feel free to contact our list of vetted vendors. And you can find recordings of past meetings on the website. Usually they're up. Sometimes they take a little while, but if you miss a meeting, then you can hop over there and re-watch the meetings or watch the speakers again. Sometimes it's nice to go back and revisit what the speakers said, and you hear it a second time and it sticks a little bit better. Let's see here. So the last thing here is a link to Dewey Karen's winter survival study. So this is through Be Informed, and Dewey Karen does this every year, and I really encourage you to go in and fill out the survey. What it does is it basically asks how many colonies did you have last year, and then at the end of winter, how many colonies do you still have left? And what that does is it gives information on how our hives are doing in the Pacific Northwest. It's anonymous information, so you don't have to say, I saved all my hives or I lost all my hives. It's just anonymous. But what it does do is it provides information based on seasons. Weather during the seasons. So for example, they've found that if it gets extra cold in November and extra rainy in February, then there tends to be higher colony mortalities. So it's not so much at the individual beekeeper level, but what's going on regionally that affects the survivability of our bees that they can track scientifically. And they do break it out between the pros and the sideliners and the hobbyists. So you'll be able to answer within your category, and then they can gather and analyze that information. It's very useful. Let's see here. So does anybody have any questions in the few minutes that we have left before I introduce our speaker? Any thoughts of what's going on in your hives, or any board members have any additional things you want to add? Always give a minute of that silence just to make sure. Okay. Okay, there's no other comments. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for tonight. So I'm just delighted to introduce to you Jeff Ott. Jeff Ott is a really great guy. We took the master's class through University of Montana at the same time. And everybody, as soon as we got on there, the chat was all, oh, we have a celebrity amongst us. And the buzz literally went up when Jeff showed up. So that was really a lot of fun. So Jeff and Kim Flottam run a podcast called Beekeeping Today. And if you haven't downloaded and listened to this podcast, you should. It's a lot of fun. They have such a great banter, and every episode has really good educational things to listen to. I listen to them. I think they're great. They have thousands of listeners worldwide every week. Jeff, your bio said that you believe that keeping bees in Washington State is challenging but interesting, and you're still learning. And you have a master's certificate both through the University of Montana and the Washington State Beekeepers Association. And tonight, you're going to talk to us about what kind of technology is available for our bee yards. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Just
Yes.
using a different microphone here that we record on. So yeah, let me share my screen. I have a few slides and we'll speed through them. And feel free to ask questions. I really just want to be a sharing of information and exchange of information. I know there's other master beekeepers and other beekeepers with various levels of experience in the room. And I think it's good that we can all learn from each other. So you should be able to see my slides at this point, if that's right. Yeah, everyone see that okay? Is that a thumbs up? Okay, I guess that's a thumbs up in there.
Yes, yep.
Right. So, I wanted to talk about the technology in a bee yard. It's a fun topic for me. I'm kind of a techno geek in many ways, and as we'll find out, that's how I really got started in the podcasting world. So we'll just click on through here. I'm trying to understand how my window's working here. Hold on just one second. No, I don't want to see you all. There we go. No, hold on. You'd think I'd know how to use Zoom by now. All right, here we go. All right, now we're cooking on full gas. All right, so I make a paycheck working in IT security, and I've been in IT security. It says 35 plus years. It's really closer to 40 plus. So it's been a long time dealing with technology, one level or another. So it just, at this point, it just comes natural for me. And by evenings, and in the evenings and weekends, I keep the bees and I do everything else. So just a little bit about myself, my background. I grew up and was born, raised, and grew up in Ohio, near Cleveland. Went to school in college in West Virginia. I got my first hive when I was about 6th grade. I think that's about sixth or 7th grade. It was just a single frame AI root observation hive. My dad and I built it down in the basement and painted it and got the glass for it. And anyways, so that was my first exposure to bees. And I kept those bees up in my bedroom on my desk with a tube going out the window. So I was pretty excited about that. And that just continued. That was the first exposure to the bees, of actually owning the bees. Later in life, after college, I moved to near Medina, Ohio, which was close to where AI Root is located. And I got involved with the Medina County Beekeepers Association, where I took over their newsletter and started the Medina County Beekeepers Association newsletter, the Bee Herders, which it continues to this day with that name. So that's it's really kind of fun. I had the editor reach out to me a few years ago, and she was all excited that they still use Bee Herder, and that's fun. And so I entered fairs. I was doing I was doing everything a beekeeper should do, and eventually always continued my education, and actually made it official at some point a couple of years ago with Don and Paul here is also here, and I think Kathy. We all went to University of Montana, and we got our masters. And I encourage everybody, you don't necessarily need to get a master's, but continue your education through formal training. I strongly encourage that. After while in Medina, I started writing for Bee Culture. Actually, is Gleanings at the time. My first article came out in 1991. It was about how packaged bees were produced and were shipped, because I was interested in tracking how the bees get from where in Ohio. They mostly came up from Georgia, and how they got from all the way from Georgia all the way to Ohio to the post office, to the poor terrified postmaster who was handing me the packages of bees with big thick leather gloves on. So it was that was my first article for Bee Culture, and I continued writing for them through the 90s and until I left Ohio. Through the Bee Culture and doing articles and speaking, I of course met with Kim Flottam. Kim was here earlier, but he had to leave. And he introduced me to Sherry Jennings, who worked for the National Honey Board, and Sherry's now my wife. So the bees have really defined my life and had really made me a better person. So I'm really excited about bees and what we do with bees. A few years ago, Kim, I was back in Ohio visiting family. Kim says, "Hey, Jeff, why don't you write me some more articles?" And I said, "Well, what about I don't want to do an article. What about a podcast?" And he said, "Well, what's a podcast?" So there we go. That's how we started off the podcast. I told him all about it, and we kicked it off in 2018, Pollinator Week of 2018, and it was the first one was with Amber Barn. We did 5 episodes that week for the 5 of the 7 days of Pollinator Week. And the little inside secret there is it wasn't so much that we were wanting to do 5 episodes of Pollinator Week, which were fun, but it was really because Apple Podcasts would not release any shows until you at least had 3. So we wanted to get up over that hurdle and release the podcast. So that was the beginning of Beekeeping Today podcast. We were originally sponsored by Bee Culture, and it's been a fantastic ride. And again, that's beekeepingtodaypodcast.com, and it's available wherever you want to download, listen to, stream videos, or directly from our website. So we have over on the website, we have over 221 episodes, over 200 guests. We've had over 1.1 million downloads. Our top countries for downloading: USA, Canada, Australia, over 180 countries around the world. and it's the #1 beekeeping podcast in Apple Podcast a couple weeks ago, last time I checked. Through that, I started a company called Growing Planet Media. And through Growing Planet Media, it's kind of an umbrella company for producing other audio content, and which includes Honeybee Obscura, which includes it's a short Beekeeping Today podcast is a 40 to 50 to 60 minute long podcast with one or two guests, and it's kind of like a beekeeping podcast variety show. If you, I won't say variety because there's no singing and dancing typically, but it's a informational show. Honeybee Obscura is a shorter format podcast on one subject. So Kim and Jim talk about, they pick a subject and then they discuss that one topic, whether it be marking queens, which is the one that comes out tomorrow or this Thursday, or they talk about stinging incidents, or they might talk about swarms. So, and Kim and Jim, I don't know if you don't know who Jim Two is. He is a professor, he worked for Ohio State University at Ohio State University Agricultural Research Center in Wooster, Ohio. And he was on the leading front of doing a lot of research on Africanized bees when they were coming across the border back in the 80s, early 90s. And he's a wealth of information. He taught their commercial beekeeping program for many years. So he is very entertaining. He's from Alabama. He's a great listen. He's fun to listen to. And so they continue Beekeeping Today. They continue Honeybee Obscura, and that's honeybeeobscura.com. 2 Million Blossoms, Dr. Kirsten Trainer. It's another podcast we produce. She had a magazine called 2millionblossoms.com, and it covers all pollinators. She's an insect biologist and studies specifically pollinators, but is very interested in honeybees. In fact, is now the director of a bee lab over in Germany near Stuttgart. And she does the 2 Million Blossoms podcast. So that's enough about the background. Let's get into the technology because we've got a ways to go here. So first, a few disclaimers I wanted to make sure that we're clear on before we get further down the road. All right, so I'll go slow through this so that you can take notes. I'm not associated with any products mentioned, so I'm not selling you anything here. There's one or two products I mentioned heavily, but that's only because that's what I'm using, because that's what I started with. And that's the only reason. Using technology is not needed to keep bees. What we're talking about tonight is just another way to add information about bees. Using technology will not make you a better beekeeper. No matter what you tell your spouse, it will not make you a better beekeeper. It'll help you become a more informed beekeeper. It'll give you better insight to what's going on in the colony. And in fact, when people think about technology, they think about what we're going to talk about here and shortly: sensors and temperature gauges and hive scales and all this other stuff. But really, what you already carry is probably the most important piece of technology you carry, and that's a cell phone. Cell phone is a wonderful piece of technology that you can use in so many different ways in the bee yard. That and a tablet. Many people have like an iPad or another type of tablet. Wonderful pieces of technology you can do a lot with. And this is what and you may get into some trouble depending on how far you get down this road. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. All right, so why use technology at all? I mean, really, do you need technology? And I've already stated, no, you don't need it. We've been keeping bees in skeps. We've been keeping bees in log hives. You don't need technology to keep bees. It's just something, it makes it funner, more fun. So that helps you, it fills in some empty spaces when you're sitting there wondering. If you go to an old timer who that has been around bees forever, they'll stand out in front of that colony without a phone, without a sensor, without any kind of technology. Look at that hive, watch the front entrance, watch the bees come and go, and they can tell you everything that's going on in that hive at that point. You don't need technology. But what it does do is it just fills in some gaps and helps shortcut some of it. So it helps you understand what's going on in the colony while you're not standing there looking at it. It can help you have a better understanding of the queen health and the reproductive state of the queen. You can talk about, you can get a good sense of colony size. Is it increasing or is it decreasing? You can get a better understanding of how are the food stores holding up, which is really important this time of year and maybe last month before the flowers started to bloom. And the colony is increasing. There's nothing new coming in, and they're just draining through the supplies. You can actually watch that happen. As you know, each time you open the colony, you are slowing down the production of that colony. You are interrupting what's going on. And the old standby saying is, each time you open the hive, you take a day of production away from that colony, because they're repairing wax. They're cleaning up the honey that's spilled. They're cleaning up all the burr comb you ripped apart. They're cleaning up the dead bees that you smushed. They are just focusing on that instead of raising bees, instead of all the other work that they are doing. And the big thing is you run the risk of killing the queen. It happens. And it's as longer you keep bees, I can guarantee at some point you're going to walk away and you're going to have a queen on your bottom of your foot, or you're going to roll her between a frame, or you pull up a frame and she'll fly away. It's going to happen. And that's part of beekeeping. And the technology does, again, if I'm feeling wistful about the bees, I can pull up a computer screen and I can see what's going on in the bees from my desk, no matter the day. I'm blowing through these really quickly. Feel free to interrupt or let me know if there's any questions. Otherwise, I will continue on like that it's all good. All right. Okay. All right, hive sensors. There's several different, I broke this up into several different hive sensors. So we basically have temperature and humidity gauges, weight, and accounting and acoustic sensors. So we'll start with temperature sensors. I call these the gateway technology. This is what most people start with. So temperature sensors are great. They're affordable. A couple years ago, they're $25 for a regular temperature sensor. I think now I saw today they're up to $45 or something. But they're relatively affordable. The biggest bang for the buck. You get 2 of them, put one above each brood box, and you're set with that colony. And you can start monitoring the production of that colony and the health of that colony. Everything we talked about, the benefits of the technology, you can start monitoring with just 2 hive sensors. You can see when the queen is laying. You can see when she's finished laying. You can see if you've had a mass departure of bees from the colony. You have a tremendous insight without ever cracking that lid of that colony. And the sensors there's different types here on the up. You probably can't see my cursor. In the upper right-hand corner of the heart, that's called a hive heart sensor. You just lay that on top of a frame. And then the bottom, there's broodminder. And that's a sensor that's in a plastic container that has a long tail on it that hangs outside the hive. And you can tell which colony has the sensors in it and where it's located. And most of these, you want to put them over the brood nest during the summer season. Just keep it in the middle of the colony or wherever you want to, but I tend to keep them in the middle of the colony. The hive scales. So you start out with a couple sensors, and then maybe later that season you say, hive scale. I really like to know when I'm when the nectar flow is on. So this is the next purchase. This is when you know you're a technic geek. You are hooked. So scales, they help you monitor weight gains and losses throughout the year. They help you monitor in the early spring as the colony increases in size and increases in production. They help you understand without even opening the hive. And then, again, this is not needed technology, but it helps you have a better understanding when the nectar flow hits. You can see from one day to the next when there's a sudden increase of several pounds in your colony, and you say, oh my gosh, something's definitely blooming. It's not my backyard, but something's definitely blooming and the bees have found it. Yeehaw. And so it helps you have a better understanding what your bees are experiencing. So you can monitor weight gains and losses. Along with the temperature sensors, and it doesn't need to be with the temperature sensors, but temperature sensors help define it. You can identify when swarms leave because you see the sudden decrease in that April 28th at 10 o'clock in the morning. You see a sudden 5-pound drop in weight in your colony with a sudden temperature drop. You know that you've had a swarm leave the colony. So you can help identify and see what triggers the swarms or see when the swarms leave. You can monitor the honey store and food consumption through the winter and into the early spring. And most of the hive scales provide some sort of temperature gauge to monitor outside temperatures. And so way back when I first started, I went to every antique store around me in Ohio looking for an old, I called it a railroad scale. There's probably a more formal name for it, but that center picture there is a what I call a railroad scale. You'd see them in the pictures of the train stations. People would weigh their luggage, and those were perfect size for one colony, and you could put that out on a concrete pad and monitor weight gain. And that's probably some of the first technology beekeepers used was for monitoring weight gain. And that's even before the little temperature gauges came out. Now, and you can also use a luggage scale. So, and these come in various kinds of types and varieties, and you can use them in different ways. You can put them underneath the colony. You can put them on a super. You can pull up gently on the the scale, and you can get an idea of the weight gain and loss from time to time. Those are not as accurate because it really depends on many factors, but they do give you an idea of weight gain and weight loss. Then the electronic scale, which is what we're talking about now. So electronic scales, there's many different types. There's many types, but there's two kinds. So the first is from a broodminder standpoint, and they probably commercialized the scales most, and that was went underneath at one edge of the colony, and while it did not accurately measure the precise weight, you could monitor the changes in weight. So you had a starting weight, and it might say it's 100 pounds on that scale, and then you could monitor the changes of it. And so it wasn't necessarily accurate that you could go to your doctor and say, or go to somebody and say, my colony weighs 100 pounds. You can just say that I started weighing at 100 pounds and it's gained 10 pounds. So something's happened there. The other type is a type of scale that measures the entire weight, and these are a little bit more accurate. Broodminder came out with one that actually sat in the above the bottom board, and we'll talk about that real quick. And then now everyone is coming out with these that sit under the bottom board, and the entire colony rests on top of it, and the actual scale part, the measurement takes place in the little feet that are at the green pads there. So the partial scale is what Broodminder made famous or made popular and started out with. And if you look at the picture underneath this on the right hand side, you can see how I set it up, that it was underneath the back edge of the colony. And you can see it poking out at the rear, and it was resting on an angle iron on the front of the colony. And so based on the physics and everything else, is more accurate than just resting on it. If you look at my long lang, what I call Ralph, that's what I was trying to say, the gargoyle, and you look underneath the gargoyle's mouth, you'll see the Broodminder partial hive scale underneath there, and that's just measuring 1/2 of that hive, but it still monitors weight changes. It's not totally accurate, but it is monitor changes, proportional changes. And then this is the full weight under the hive scale. And this one actually goes above the bottom board. And I like this one a lot in some ways, because I use slatted racks on all of my colonies. That's a topic for another discussion, but I long ago got into using slatted racks, and that's the way I like to keep bees. And this one came with a slatted rack, so I was happy. There's issues with it, but all of these scales, nothing's perfect. Technology is not perfect, but I enjoy this one, and when it's new, it looks really good on a white hive. And this is another version, another look at the under the full scale hive. So you can see that it rests on a solid ground. You need to have it on a solid surface and level as well. And then you stack your colony on top of it. Excuse me, top of it. And the box at the back holds the batteries and the sensors, control panel, and the signal, the antennas for the sending of the information. All right, so I'm sorry, we're going to run up against time here, so I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly. This is the latest technology right now, is counting bees and listening to bees. You go to the websites, and this is what companies are pushing. So it's a newer technology. It's placed at the entrance. There's 2 different types that I've seen on the market right now. One, the bees pass between sensors. Another one uses LiDAR technology. It's a type of radar. And then the bees pass through it or approach the hive, and the sensors are able to count the number of bees as they come and go. So theoretically, you could see how many bees left in the morning, how many bees came back at night, and you somehow know, theoretically, or I guess, I don't know how I should say this. Supposedly that lets you know how many bees were lost during the day. I say I'm a little skeptical about that, because we know some bees bivouac out overnight, and so you just have to take it a little grain of salt that it's not just they're all dying. Some may go somewhere else. All right, so so here's the 2 different types of that are.
Do you mind
Yeah.
if I jump in for a second?
Please.
We have till 8:30, not just 10 minutes. I just want to make sure that you know that when you say we're running out of time, okay.
Well, then I'll slow down. Thank you.
Okay, good. It sounded like you thought we were running out of time. We got plenty of time.
Oh, well, we'll go back to start now, and I can slow down. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we'll just. Good. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. They'll save plenty of time for questions if there are any. So I was just looking at the LiDAR solution at the top, and that's Broodminder's new gadget, and it sits on the front of the hive and looks out, faces front forward, and it counts the bees as it approaches the entrance of the colony. And I don't know how accurate it is, but this is what it does. And then on the back side of this box, it has an acoustic sensor. So it's recording, monitoring volume of the noise inside the colony. So in your reporting, you'll be able to tell when a lot of bees are leaving, and and when there's a lot of activity. So, and this little graph that's on the left-hand side next to the LiDAR, the blue line is the noise. I'm sorry, the blue line is the bees coming and going, and the purple line is the noise inside the colony. So it's new technology. They're still trying to figure out how to use it, but it's there. The bottom one is put out by the Hive Heart people, and you can see the little channels that the bees pass through, and by passing through that, I'm not sure whether it's some sort of optic sensor or other type of sensor that counts the bees as they go through. And you can see on the report on the bottom, probably poorly because I cropped the picture too small, but each one of those channels, 12 channels, has a number underneath it, so you can see how many bees come in through that channel, and how many bees exit through that channel. And then at the graph in the middle, in that photograph, you can see there's most activity was there at between noon and 3 in the afternoon. So, this is, again, lots of information that they're still trying to figure out. It's available and whether it's useful or how to use it. We also have lots of bee apps. If you go out to your Google Play or Apple Store or Google Store, I can't remember the Android store. There's multiple apps out there that will help you with your record keeping. So I've messed with some of these before. Hive Tracks I'm familiar with. It's really helpful if you want to keep records and you want to keep your records on your tablet or on your phone. The application like Hive Tracks or any of these others will help you remember what you did in that colony on any specific day, and you can record anything on it. When you added equipment, when you took off equipment, if the status of the brood, how many frames of brood you have, how many frames of bees, any event that you want to record is available and will be there forever, that you can go back and study at some point and say, geez, I wonder if if I killed that queen when I was in that hive, because after 21 days with everything else, I can see that the temperature dropped, and 21 days the temperature went up, and there must be another queen in there. So you can start putting together all this information and having a better understanding of what's going on in your colony without, again, opening it up. So there's lots of little apps that are available that are useful on iPad and for iPhone. This Bee Health Guru is an interesting one for those that have were in the University of Montana course. You're aware of this. It's Dr. Bromenshank's application that runs on a phone, and you put the phone in the entrance of your beehive, and you hit that record, and it records for about 60 seconds, I think, 30 or 60 seconds. And then it does an analysis based on, he was calling it AI because it had a library of data that it learned from, that they could then, based on the sound, tell whether there's a high infestation of varroa. They could tell if there was American foul brood. They could tell, but there were several other options. Maybe Don or Paul, you can remind me what else was available on that. But it picked up, they were working on fine-tuning the AI to make it more usable. So it's really fun what they're doing with this technology. And like I said, with the cell phone that you carry in your pocket, you have a lot of technology right there. Oh, weather stations. All right, so of all these gadgets, a weather station, you might get away with this one on the home front. I'm just not saying from personal experience. I'm just saying this one, you can say it's for the family. So weather stations are fun because they help you understand better the interesting dynamics weather plays on your bees. I mean, we all can look outside and say it's raining again, but do we understand how many days of rain we've had? Do we know how much rain we've had? Do we know the barometric pressure? And so that I think as a beekeeper, I like to know and know in my actual bee yard. So I have one of these in my home yard, so I can just I don't know, because it's fun. It's all fun. And all the apps are very smart, and so you get an accurate forecast for that location. It's not a generalized forecast for the region. All right, so we just got through all the sensors, and there's probably more that I'm unaware of, but there's a lot of sensors, but sensors mean nothing without the data. And so you have to get the data from the sensor to a computer somewhere, whether it be your phone or online or on your desktop computer. So there's primarily two ways of doing this, or three ways. You collect using an app. So you use your iPhone or your phone using the vendor's app, and you walk up to next to the colony, and you hit sync or collect or whatever, and it sits there and it pulls the computer on the sensor, the chip on the sensor, and it takes in all that information and puts it in a database and displays it. That's, you go by each colony collecting that information, or you can get snazzy or fancier, and you can get a small hub that sits there and continuously monitors the sensors in your bee yard and stores that information on one central point, and the beekeeper just goes to that central point, that hub, and using that app downloads the information. So it just saves you time as a beekeeper. You have to just collect from one place and not 10 places. You can collect information using a hub that's connected to a cellular network. There's data, the cellular data networks around the country, and you can connect using a hub to the cellular network. And for a low monthly fee or a low annual fee, this will continuously monitor, or it will continuously monitor the sensors and send that information up to the central server, to the cloud. And the same thing with the web, with a Wi-Fi connected hub. This is if your hub or your house is close enough to the bee yard that you can get a Wi-Fi signal. And so instead of using instead of using a cell connected hub, you're just using your home Wi-Fi to transfer the data. That's the three main ways of collecting the data. So you have to use it. You got the data collected, you got it in a central location, and you need it to help you. I mean, you're doing this and you got to find a way. You want it to work. So otherwise, if you're not using the data, if it's not useful, it's just what I said, just expensive noise. It's just data with no use. So again, you want it to produce meaningful reports. You want the technology to produce some meaningful data that you can act on as a beekeeper, and you can incorporate it into your management practices. And this is where the rubber meets the road in my estimate. And I'm not sure how this comes across on your screens at home or there in the room. But in this particular case, this is a real simple example using just a weight and temperature sensors on one hive for a season, for several weeks, from May to October, for one season. So you can see in the bottom the temperature where they installed packages, and the temperature varies on a daily basis as the colony becomes established, the queen is released. And you can see immediately when she starts laying eggs, because the bees go into the maintaining temperature mode. And so that you see the ideal brood temp, they highlight it there in the graph, so you don't have to sit there and remember it every day, but it's, from 93 to 98 degrees. That's the ideal brood zone. And you can see how effective the bees have been, or were in this case, all that time, keep maintaining that temperature. And then come towards the end of September and at the end of October, you can see the temperature drops as the queen reduces the egg production, and the bees no longer need to maintain that high temperature. Same thing with the weight. On the same package taken at the same time, you can see the steady increase of the weight of the colony through the months, through the weeks, as the bees become more populous and collect more nectar, more nectar and more pollen, and the colony grows. And then I don't see it here. Maybe it's there at these identifiers 1 and 2, where they might have pulled some honey or pulled some honey. You can see when the beekeeper, when you pull honey, you can see all this happen and monitor it from a year-to-year basis. This is where some of the fun things with monitoring temperature and weight is when swarms happen. So you can see in this particular example, again, on the bottom is the temperature, and you can see that the temperature is in a steady brood zone state. That's where it wants to be. And then around 1 o'clock on this April 21st, there's a sudden spike in temperature, and they found that when the bees swarm, there's a momentary spike in temperatures in the hive and all the bees, and all the excitement of the bees getting ready to leave. They start buzzing. You probably heard that term. They start buzzing. They start running around. They get all excited, and the heat inside the colony spikes. And you can see that happening right here. At the same time, you can see the weight's pretty steady. Then all of a sudden it drops, and we have a 5.5 pound drop in weight. That's 5.5 pounds of bees that have left that colony at that time. And there quite a few bees remained back, and you can see the temperature in the brood area was maintained, but you can see the temperature dropped in the upper brood box, because that's where probably most of the bees were resting. They're no longer there. Temperature drops, or they go down to the brood zone to maintain that temperature. So you can actually see that the physical dynamics of the swarm inside the colony that you intellectually know is happening as a beekeeper, but watching it and seeing it on as recorded by the sensors is fascinating. And then this is frustrating to see when you have a colony that likes multiple swarms. So in this particular case, you can see multiple spikes on the bottom on the temperature range, where there are multiple swarms, where you have the big swarm, you have some practice swarms, or you have, sometimes I call them practice swarms. They're probably, who knows what they really are, but the queen maybe doesn't actually get out. She returns she falls, she climbs back in, the bees return. These are some of the early spikes, but then finally they do get it right. And midway through on this graph, you can see the weight drop suddenly. And so you had a big loss of bees right there at that where it's number 3. And then you had some after swarms, and you can see those after the main swarm go across on the bottom, and to the point that the temperature in the brood zone, brood box dropped low, and then until they finally got it back up. But it's, as a beekeeper, you start looking at this and you think, oh, I missed that. I should have been on top of that. And you might have seen the one big swarm, but you may not have seen the after swarms. And it's amazing, you know, you think, oh, there's a big swarm that left. Well, that's it. Well, no, there's actually a couple others that left too. We're talking about swarm boxes earlier, and beekeepers are starting to put these sensors in their swarm boxes so that they can monitor when a swarm has entered into their trap. And so, you know, you think, well, geez, you know, you can just walk up and see, yeah, there's bees entering, it's full. Again, this technology is not necessary, but it's still fun that you could sit there and know when your swarm trap has something in it. So in this bottom graph on the far left, you can see the pink line is pretty much following the outside temperature. The dotted line is the outside temperature that was recorded by the sensor. And you can see it's the inside the sensor is the inside the box sensor is following the outside temperature. And then around 11 o'clock on April 22nd, the temperature is suddenly higher. And you can see that it's generally following the outside temperature, but there is I don't know, what is that? 20-degree difference between the outside temperature, inside temperature. You know that box is occupied at that point. And at the far right is when the beekeeper collected the swarm and took the swarm and the hive and the box away. But so you can really see the difference when the box is actually occupied. And then this is an eye chart, and I apologize. This is a 90-day stretch for a colony, and I just wanted to show this to you. That along the top, this is basically the dashboard from a broodminder. Sorry about that. From the broodminder report over a 90-day period, and you can see this at the top. You can see the weight of the one colony that had the scale just gradually go down over 90 days, and that's as the colony was going through its reserves and before the flowers really came on board. And you can actually see the weight drop in the colony. In the middle, you can see that's the honey productivity. That's the difference between the start and ending weights. So you can see that the scale is generally going down as it's being consumed. On the very bottom is the temperature differences, and so of multiple colonies. But you can see halfway through on this chart that the bees were keeping warm, and they're just hovering right above the outside temperature, keeping maybe 50, 40 degrees. But then around the middle of the chart, they kick in, and you know at that point the queen is laying eggs, and the colony is working to keep them warm. So seeing all that biology happening as represented in these charts, just I think for many beekeepers is enjoyable. Maybe I'm projecting. And here's another type of report. It's on easier to see. Again, this is a little bit different. At the top is a closer look at the bee counter, and another look at temperature and humidity. Humidity is a funny thing because a lot of sensors include them. I'd like it around here to know in the wintertime, because I find that when Don was talking about, I think keeping bees in Washington State is a challenge, and I do think that is compared to where I've kept bees in Ohio and Colorado. I do find the humidity and moisture content, moisture during the winter, a bigger challenge than I had imagined. And knowing what the humidity is on the colony during the wintertime is useful for me as I try to figure out the best way to winter my bees in the South Puget Sound area. So, but if you lived in Arizona or most other parts of the country, have an understanding the humidity is not as, I don't think is meaningful, but here I think it is, especially in the wintertime, because we all know you have to keep on top of the moisture of the hive. All of the apps, all of the, as we mentioned, all of the sensors have some form of app, Broodminder and Hive Heart, so you can take a look at what's going on in your colony from your iPhone. You don't always need to be in front of a computer. And those are the main ways of monitoring and using technology today in the bee yard. You have hive temperatures, hive humidity, you have hive weight, you can have bee counters, you can have acoustics. Those are the main sensor technology available today, and there's variants of that. You can get there. Some people are real handy with electronics, and they've built their own matrix of sensors that they dangle down between frames, and so they get basically a 3D image of the heat in the colony. And is it useful? Only from an understanding of bee biology. Is it useful for you to pull together all this and make and you're a honey producer or a pollinator? No, it'll just honestly just be in your way. But here's some other technologies that may or may not be useful in a bee yard, or as I call, other ways to get divorced. So drones. We all know about drones as a beekeeper. They're the male bees, but there are now drones that we can use in the bee yard and around bees if you want to study bees. A couple weeks ago, we had a guest on the show, Julia McLeod, who runs a website called Map My DCA, a drone congregation area. And she uses drones, these mechanical drones, and with a 20-foot piece of string on it, carrying basically a queen lure. And she flies this around various areas to try to find where the drone congregation areas are in her neighborhood. So is it useful if you're raising queens? And yeah, it is. You want to know where those drones are congregating and what other colonies are in that area that might be contributing to those drones. So drones for drones. Infrared cameras are a really fascinating piece of equipment that you'll see some people use. There are handheld IR cameras, and there are drone-based IR cameras. And so you can use these to monitor heat loss. So in the lower left-hand corner, there's my long-laying hive, and you can see with the brighter yellow temperature at the end and the mouth of the gargoyle, the heat coming out, you can see basically where in that hive that colony is, where the core of that colony is towards the end of that hive. And a movie in the middle, you can see that it's wrapped, so there's not much heat loss through the wrap. That's a good thing to see. but you can see, I don't know if you can actually see it on your screens, but there's bright yellow blazes going to the entrance of the hive, and those are the field bees returning to the colony, all lit up. They're warm, coming and flying all that time. So is it useful? It's interesting. Adds to the entertainment of keeping bees. All right, so we're going to get ready to wrap up here. Just here's some additional resources. I talked about Broodminder, Beehive Monitoring USA. We have your main vendors will have different kinds of bee scales available. I'm not sure about the sensors, but I know Better Bee and Man Lake both have scales available. Facebook has at least one, I know, or two groups on beehive monitoring. So you want to check those, look for those. Just look for bee monitoring and beehive monitoring. If you're into Facebook, lots of good discussions going on there. And of course, you want to keep on tabs at Beekeeping Today podcast. So, in closing, technology is a tool. It's not the final answer. The technology is constantly evolving, so what you buy today is probably going to be replaced by something tomorrow. That's just we all used to that now. Technology's sake, it's only useful if you can apply it. So if you're collecting all that data, but you don't know what to do with it, or if you don't have a way to understand it or to put it into action, meaningful action, then it's just noise. It's just you want it. I would think if you're going to spend money on it, you want it to be meaningful for you. The fourth bullet point is sticks my craw a little bit. There's no standardization of the data of sensors. So what Broodminder produces and those reports and those data streams is not compatible necessarily with hive heart sensors. So you can't mix those in the same hive and collect the information using the same tool. You'd have to use two different apps to collect the different data, and then there's no way to combine that data in one report. So there's no standardization of data or reporting or communication between vendors. There's no there's just no communication between vendors on data. So that's why I've stuck with one vendor, so everything works in one place. I don't have to have multiple screens running. Like everything else, everything in technology, everything runs on batteries, and they will die when you don't want them to. They will die on December 28th. It'll die in January, and all of a sudden you run blind, and you don't want to open the hive during that time of year to replace the battery. So you have to come up with a means to replace the batteries in the fall, so that you just have to come up. You have to factor that into your management scheme. And then I joke about this, and really, folks, it's just fun. The gear acquisition syndrome can lead to problems. I'm just saying, not from personal experience. I'm just saying that you can get carried away with it, and people will question your sanity. So that's really it. So open it up to questions, comments. Anything about what we talked about, anything on the podcast, anything about bees. I'll just open it up for anything. Don't tell me that audio stopped an hour ago.
So I'll lead off with a question. So those are some really good technology options. Thank you. And there's a lot of things that could help us be better beekeepers, but like you said, not necessary. Which ones do you find provide the most meaningful information? And I'm sure you probably have used most of these. If you just had to pick one or two, which ones would actually help assist people get better information from their hives?
I like the temperature sensors. I mean, if I had to throw away everything except one set of sensors, I would keep the temperature sensors, because it really does give me a status on the size of the brood, or size of the colony, whether there's brood present, and the current health of the colony, and even I said size, right? So if you have sensors on top, like right now, my hives, all my lower boxes are right at brood raising temperature. The upper brood boxes are not. There's some residual heat coming up, but they're not at 90, 93 degrees. So yeah, I'd say sensors are, and then I do like the scales. Just that the scales are more expensive, and changing batteries on scales can be problematic if it's underneath, a 200-pound colony.
And a couple of follow-up questions, and then we've got some good questions in chat. So Broodminder is the most popular temperature sensor, and I've kind of been watching their website, and they are always sold out of the humidity ones, and they're a lot more expensive. Do you think that that's a really necessary addition? That's part of question number one. And question number two is, for $6 for 6 of them on Amazon, you can get little tiny battery operated thermometers and humidity sensors, but you actually have to open the hive and peek at it and record it. Do you think that those are a useful but lower tech, more work option?
So the first question is a humidity sensor. Today, well, if I lived anywhere else but here, I wouldn't worry about the humidity sensor. Here, I like having one humidity sensor in the colony. I don't put both. I use one humidity sensor and I put it on top. Don't ask me why, and I don't know if there's any scientific reason I should have it on top instead of bottom, but I tend to think that if humidity will rise, but that may not always be the case. So anyways, I could be wrong there. Don't. Anyways, so the humidity, I don't think it's critical, although I really like it for the humidity. So, if you're sitting there say, well, I guess I'm going to have to wait to get the humidity, go ahead and get the temperature sensor, and so you can start monitoring and get used to the technology, and then ultimately the humidity sensor will come in. And the second question was, remind me real quick.
It was just, you can buy little inexpensive temperature humidity on Amazon, but they're a lot of work to record every time.
Yeah, so that kind of defeats the purpose too, because you're having to open the colony up to catch the temperature. So I personally wouldn't want to do that, because it defeats the purpose of. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at it, but I like the convenience of standing in front of the colony and recording the temp, downloading the temp.
Great. And Mary has a question. How often do you broadcast your podcast?
Thank you, Mary. The podcast Beekeeping Today podcast comes out every Monday, and it releases at 6 a.m. Here on the West Coast, and it 52 weeks a year. And then the Honeybee Obscure also comes out weekly, but it comes out on Thursday mornings.
Great. And Jeff is asking, does the LiDAR counter distinguish between house bees and robber bees and yellow jackets, or does it just count everything that moves?
Yeah, I think there's no way at this point that I'm aware of that it can distinguish it's just a robber bee from a returning worker. It's not that smart. It just sees the flash and records it as there's one. And the same thing with the yellow jacket. I don't think it's smart enough to distinguish between the shiny yellow jacket versus a fuzzy honeybee. That'd be cool though.
Although you would see the volume go up a lot, so that might be an indicator that there was robbing going on. Yeah. Gerardo asks, bees tend to coat everything inside the hive with wax and propolis. How can humidity sensors function when they're coated?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Gerardo. So the humidity sensors are in a wrapper, well, on the broodminder, I can speak to broodminder, are in a wrapper that are long enough that the bees will not coat everything, so it can still receive some of the humidity reading. I've not had anything ever go completely dark on the humidity standpoint. I've had the other case where the bees have that's gotten wet inside and the sensor quit. But I've not had anything shut off because of wax or propolis that the sensor doesn't work. And on the sensors, on the wrappers, on the broodminder sensors, I can't speak to hive heart, that you can, when you're doing your hive inspections, you pull out the sensors and you can pull off the wax, pull off the propolis. Of course, change batteries if you have to. They're little coin batteries. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. And during the wintertime, if you want to, you can take the wrapper in, put it in the freezer, or anytime actually, and take the wrapper in and the sensor, put it in the freezer, and let it freeze, and then pull it out, and all that just snaps right off. So good question though. Let me see.
And so if people have more than 2 or 3 hives, what do you think is the recommended percentage of hives that get some kind of monitor? Should it be 100% or can it be a sampling?
All right, so this is when we go back to the marital discord. So it depends on what you want to spend on it. If every colony is it's unique superorganism, and so it has its own lifespan, and so you can put set up one colony and say, well, I'm going to use this as my control unit, control colony, and then what's going on here is probably going on in my other 2 colonies. And I started out that way, but then I decided, well, I'm just going to put temperature sensors into all of my colonies, and I can at least do that. Then I started rolling out and starting adding more scales to my colonies, but those are a little bit more expensive. So I would start out with one colony and see how you like it, and whether it's meaningful to you, and then expand as you see fit, what works best for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kathy has a question. She says that she uses something called a Govee sensor, a GOVEE, and it does both temperature and humidity, and you can see the results on your phone. Maybe it doesn't record it over time, but she says it sends you an alert if things go out of a certain parameter. Have you heard of Govee sensors?
No, I'm not.
Sensors?
No, I'm not familiar with that. I will have to look into that.
She says they're about $30, which is that's about half the cost of the broodminder, which is, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, the temperature humidity sensor for broodminders, I think 75 is what I saw recently, and the temperature alone is 45, I think. So it adds up quickly, and yeah. So I'm not familiar with the Govee, but I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Okay, any last questions before we wrap up? We had a great turnout tonight. Thank you, Jeff. That was so informative and so interesting. I had no idea there was so much technology out there, and that makes me want to go and make sure that I get some of that technology in my hive. So I think I have one broodminder. I need to get that going again, and I think I'll try Kathy's Govee. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who are really getting interested in DCA areas. Do you think you'll do a podcast on how to use a drone to find that? I think you'd get a lot of interest there.
Like Julia was on the show, and if you look on a website or podcast,
that's right.
And that was just in March, just recently, within the last 8 weeks for sure, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Julia was on, and she talked about using, and she has a website that explains all about it. And something I know I want to explore this summer. I know Paul and I have been scheming ways to use drones to get into trouble, to find drone congregation areas.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, what fun. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, PSBA. Thank you again, Jeff. This is just a delight
My
hearing
pleasure.
your presentation. And have a fantastic rest of the sunny week, everyone. We'll see you next month. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Bye-bye.